Thank you for joining me for this polyrhythms session. I'm going to be explaining what polyrhythms are utilizing this app, Polyrhythm Explorer, which is not yet released but should be by the time that you see a recording of this video. And I basically designed it to help explain polyrhythms. So it was for the purpose of this talk, but I figure for teachers and things it might be a useful tool, and also for anybody who just wants to play around with polyrhythms to kind of get inside them a little bit more. So I'll be using this to explain the kind of basic concepts of polyrhythms, and then I'll show you some of the new features in Polynome related to polyrhythms. And then at the end, I'll take any questions you've got about this or Polynome in general. And I'll try and keep it to under an hour in total. So this is how this app loads up with this weird grid, but I am going to change some settings a bit and turn these off. And so we'll start like this. So let's say well, first question is, what is a polyrhythm? So poly, more than one, rhythm. But if you have two rhythms that are too similar, you wouldn't really consider that to be a polyrhythm. So as we go through this will be all things that you could play one rhythm with one hand and the other rhythm with the other hand. So say, for example, we wanted a polyrhythm of 2 against 4. You wouldn't consider this a polyrhythm because it's kind of simple. Your right hand is going to play, say your left hand is going to play the blue squares and your right hand is going to play the red circles. This is just a basic drum groove hand snare kind of thing. And because all of these red circles appear on the same divisions as the blue squares, it's basically just a layered rhythm. It doesn't have the essence of a polyrhythm, which is that it's not easy to derive one from the other. So if I turn these off and we start with a rate of 4 and we play this, that's basically 4 evenly spaced pulses in, I could say a bar, but I'm going to try and steer clear of notation terms to begin with. But you can hear the tambourine at the start. If I turn this off, you just hear a tambourine. So we're dividing that amount of time evenly into 4, and it sounds like this. And to divide it evenly into 2, it sounds like that. And you do them together. So you could call that a 4 against 2 polyrhythm, but nobody would really consider it a polyrhythm because they share that same subdivision grid. So let's say instead of 2 against 4, I'll turn the 4 off, you've got 2 here, and now you want to play 3 evenly spaced notes in this space. So let's set this to 3. So this is what your 2 looks like spread out. And this is what 3 looks like spread out. And you put them together, and now you can see that these don't share the same grid. So if you were playing your left hand, playing this 3 here, playing the 3 like this, then if you're just playing those, there is no real indication of how this second circle should fit into this grid. You can kind of see that it's between this one and this one, but we don't have the markings to kind of tell us exactly where it goes. So the key to breaking down any polyrhythm is to find a subdivision grid that fits both rates. So something that fits these 3 and fits these 2. And for the most part, that will just be a case of multiplying the 2 numbers. So in this menu, I can turn on Show Subdivisions, and you can see if we have 6 subdivisions, then both the blue squares and the red circles fit on this grid. So if you play a beat or a count every 3 subdivisions, then you can fit 2 evenly in that space. And if you were to play a count every 2 subdivisions, then you can fit 3 evenly in that space. And so playing a 2 against 3 polyrhythm is simply a case of kind of imagining this grid of all these 6 notes and then playing one hand on one and one hand on the other. So there are a few different settings in this app to help you see how this all kind of lines up. So right now, these numbers at the top are counting the subdivisions. So it's counting these 6 markers. But if you want to see the spacing of the red circles or the blue squares, that is an option. If you tap on the numbers and we choose A spacing, you can see that these are now showing you that there are 3 subdivisions per circle, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you can also set it to B spacing, and you can see that these are groups of 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then there's also a focus mode, which I'll explain in a moment. But in this linear layout, that just counts those markers. So let's apply the same principle, but instead of 2 against 3, let's do 4 against 3. So I'll turn these off, and we'll do 4 against 3, and you can see, whoops, 5, 4 against 3, you can see it's given us 12 markers in this case, because you can divide 12 evenly into 4, and you can divide it evenly into 3. So if we turn on this A rate, it's going to play every 3 markers, and that evenly divides up that space. And if we turn on the B rate here, it plays every 4 markers, so you can fit 3 of those in the space. And if you do them together, this is how your 4 against 3 sounds like. Now, this is a good way of kind of seeing how they relate, but as these polyrhythms get larger in number, so let's do, for example, well, this is large enough, but you could, I mean, this goes up to 12, so you could do 11 against 12, and this has to scroll now in order to fit the 132 subdivisions on there. So let's go back to 4 against 3 and think about how we would think about playing a polyrhythm. So in most cases, you're going to have one rhythm that you're playing to begin with. So maybe that's the 4. So you're playing this, you're just dividing up a bar into 4 even pulses, and you want to play the 3 on top of that. So the question then is, how does that rhythm of 3, how does that relate to what we might be considering a quarter note if you're thinking in notation, but this main pulse? So there's a layout mode in this, which is how I think about explaining polyrhythms. So instead of laying it out linearly like this, let's start a new line with each beat. So if we, on this layout mode, go to focus A, and you can see it says 1 triplet, 1 triplet, 1 triplet, 1 triplet. That's the focus mode that I was talking about here. If we choose count, then it just numbers all of those markers. So you can see there's still 12 markers here. We've just laid them out in a grid. And if you want to count that in a musical way, thinking of these as triplets is handy. So we can think 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And then we want to see where we would need to put 3 squares in order to have them evenly spaced through this. So if we turn this on, you can see there's always going to be both hands on the 1. And then you can see that you get 1 on the trip of beat 2 and on the let of beat 3, and then nothing in beat 4. So now you can count this polyrhythm thinking of those 4 red circles as being the main pulse, think in triplets, and then essentially clap or play the squares on the trip and then on the let and then nothing. So I'll turn this off to start with. 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And one thing that I like to do when learning polyrhythms is to get this pattern in my head and be able to tap it out ideally. So one hand on one knee and one hand on the other knee, and you start to tap this pattern out and then switch between counting the right hand part and counting the left-hand part. And that's kind of tricky. I have a mode in here where we can tell this to count rhythm A. So this will count the 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So you would be playing this 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the idea is that you keep playing that same pattern, but you switch to counting the other side.
2, 3,
1, 2, 3. And you have to be able to hear when you're counting that they are evenly spaced, and really focus on the 3 as being the main part of the rhythm. Now, there's another trick up Polyrhythm Explorer's sleeve here, which is you can relay out these markers to put the blue ones down the side. So if I choose focus on B, now we have a blue square on the start of each line, and it's labeled these as 1E and A now, which is kind of drummer speak for dividing into 4. So if I turn off rate A and we listen to this,
1, 2, 3.
So we're thinking 1E and A, 2E and A, 3E and A. And then when we bring in rate A, you can see that that's going to fall on the 1, on the A, on the and of 2, and the E of 3. So it's kind of coming in 1/16th note each time. It gets one beat earlier. But this is exactly the same as the other version that we had. Nothing has changed with how it sounds. I'll switch between them.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
So when you see it laid out this way, it's easy for your brain to focus on the blue ones as being the pulse. And you're having to think dividing into 4 like that. 1E and A, 2E and A, 3E and A. But I'm going to keep the counting the same, the voice count, but I'm going to switch the layout to put the red circles down the side. And just, you'll notice that it's going to label it as triplets. But notice how the actual melody and the pattern doesn't change.
2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1.
So you can start to switch now to hearing those 4 red circles as the main pulse. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, and I can switch the voice count over.
3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
So basically, the polyrhythm of 3 against 4 is the same as the polyrhythm of 4 against 3. You're just focusing on it in a different way, and your brain has to subdivide the rates into different subdivisions. So if 4 is the focus, you're dividing into triplets, and if 3 is the focus, you're dividing into 16th notes. 1E and A, 2E and A, 3E and A, 1E and A, 2E and A, 3E and A. So basically what you can do in here is just switch between those while the polyrhythm is playing, and it really helps you to flip your brain to hearing one or the other rhythm as the main rhythm. It's kind of like when you get optical illusions where you have something that looks like a staircase that's going away from you, and then you blink and it looks like it's coming towards you, and it's hard to sort of switch. You have to imagine the light source moving, because it's to do with where the shadows and the perspective and things. And with this, it's a similar trick to shifting your brain, is that you have to start thinking of subdividing that main pulse differently. But this works with any polyrhythm. Now, whenever you've got a 4 or a 3 or a 2 involved in the polyrhythm, so let's say we do 5 against 2. So I'll do 5 and 2, and I'll focus on rate A. So notice that because we've got a 2 in here, we can subdivide into 8th notes. We can think 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and that's easy to do. So if you're playing the 5,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Then to put the 2 over the 5 is easy, because you just have to put it on the and of 3. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, and 5. And we can speed this up.
2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2.
And then I can turn the count off.
1, 2.
1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. So you can hear that polyrhythm, and it's easy to hear it. But if you were presented with a 2 against 5 polyrhythm, instead of dividing into 2 like this, which we can count, then you're going to be dividing into 5. Now, in this app, I write it out as university because that's an easy way of counting 5 syllables. University, university. And it helped me get away from having another set of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then saying you play the 1 on the 1, and you play the 2 on the 3, and you play the 3 on the 5. So here you can think you play the 1 on the U, the 2 on the ver, the 3 on the T. And now you can switch this to A or B spacing. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is how these blue squares are spread out. Or if you switch to A spacing, you can see that it's just 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then we'll go back to the focus mode. University, university. So if you were already playing the 2, 1, 2, and you wanted to overlay a 5 over top of that, you have to first be able to divide those pulses into 5. University, 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 which in itself, if you've never done this, is a tricky thing to be able to do. But once you can do that, and you can obviously slow it down, let's slow it down a little bit. So we'll play the 2. University, 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 university. So once you can do that, then you just think about where these come. University, 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 university. And it's every other syllable. So again, it's not too difficult when there's a 2 involved, because you could say university, university, and then university, 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 university. Just accent every other syllable, and it kind of helps it come out. So that's what your 5 against 2. So even with it showing the focus mode being the 2 on the beat, I'm still hearing the 5 as the main pulse. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. So you need to practice really focusing on the 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. So you can turn this off.
2,
1. That's your starting point. University, university. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So lots of different ways of counting it, lots of different ways of feeling it. But this was just to demonstrate that whenever there's a 2 involved, one side of the polyrhythm will just involve dividing a beat in 2. So focus on A. If we had an 11 against 2 polyrhythm, it's just 11 counts, and then the 2 comes by putting a blue one on the end of 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. But if you lay it out the other way, and I don't have not an acronym, I don't have a phrase for 11 evenly spaced notes, so it just numbers it 1 to 11. But this way, you have to be able to divide a beat into 11 in order to evenly put 11 over a 2. But that's unlikely that you'll need to do that. Most polyrhythms that you would come across that are useful and musical are going to be with rates below 6, probably. And anything else is just for being fancy. So let's go to 3 against 4 again. And I'll just quickly show you what else is in here. You've got the column numbering. You can hide the subdivisions. When you hide the subdivisions, you don't hear them either. So you get to hear what a 3 against 4 polyrhythm sounds like.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
So that's your 3 against 4 polyrhythm laid out in a grid, which makes less sense when you can't see the subdivisions. We can go back to the linear layout. So that's the hide and show subdivisions. And then you also have on here choose sounds. So I'll play it and you can choose different sounds. So you might choose a hi-hat for the subdivision and a snare for the one rate and a kick for the other rate. So that actually sounds like a groove that you could write a song to. So that's an example of kind of a 3 against 4 polyrhythm, though when we have all the subdivisions in there, it's technically not a polyrhythm, it's just a groove. But you can see how you can get some useful musical ideas from this.
Hello, Joe.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sean. I'm in the United States right now. I just wanted to make a comment here, and maybe this is readily apparent to all the other drummers on here, but it took me forever to figure this out and notice any sort of similarity. So, the way I think about these things a lot of times, and this app is great for doing that, is if I have a 3/4 polyrhythm, and let's take time signature and everything out of
Mm-hmm.
this, and we're just thinking of subdivisions.
Mm-hmm.
If I want 3/4, I think, okay, well, I need four evenly spaced or three evenly spaced notes. And the way that I'm going to get that is I'm going to put an accent or a mark on every fourth one.
Mm-hmm.
And that works for just about every polyrhythm. Well, every polyrhythm, really. If you thought about 5/7,
Yeah.
to get five, you would accent every seventh one and
Mm-hmm.
flip it around. You would accent every fifth one.
Yeah.
And that's a great way for just writing down kind of just sticks on graph paper and figuring out where the accents go in any polyrhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it took me forever to notice that relationship, and I just wanted to save people some frustration. If and now that we have this app here, it's great to be able to visualize it. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's exactly what this is doing, and that A spacing and B spacing that I was
Hmm.
talking about. If I turn on A spacing, you can see that it's accent every fourth beat,
Yep. Yep.
and if we turn on B spacing, it's accent every third beat. And the
And
sort
then
of
you
sorry,
get
go
your
on.
and you get your evenly spaced notes that way, which fulfills our rules for the polyrhythm, right?
Yes,
So,
exactly.
yep.
Yeah. So the sort of the strange thing is the formula for working out a polyrhythm is if 3 against 4, you multiply 3 by 4 to get 12, and
Right.
then for the 3 you play every fourth note, and for the 4 you play every third note. So trying
Three.
to write it
Yeah.
out, you do X and Y, and it's divided into X and play every Yth one. It's very odd, but to get the 3 you're playing every fourth note, and to get the 4 you're playing every third note, because of how they divide into this larger grid of 12. So 4 times 3, so you got 4 notes and a spacing of 3, that gives you 12, and you've got 3 notes, 1, 2, 3, with a spacing of 4 each, and that gives you 12. So yeah, that's how that works out. And then the gridding in this is essentially if you are writing out the spacing for the red ones here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're playing every fourth note. If you arrange them on a line like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, these blue ones are appearing every third note. So that's where this B spacing comes in handy, and it's just kind of confirming that these are in fact all 3 notes apart. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and they fit into the 12 in that way. So then when you're playing this, this can be useful for counting these as well. So if I turn off rate B, and we count the A spacing here. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, let me slow it down a little bit. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can clap like that. You could do that on one hand. And then another way of thinking about the B part is, instead of thinking which numbers of this division it comes on, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can actually just start counting up to 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I can put B spacing here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we started off by counting the 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep the same speed going, but just count up to 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's putting the kick in. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And what you've kind of done then is switched around. So now if I put the focus on this B rate, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. To get the A rate again, you just count up to 4 without changing the speed. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 against 4, well, it works for any of them, but you can easily figure out where to play this hand or that hand by counting like that. So you're always counting that subdivision and you're just changing the spacing. What's harder is that to really be able to play the polyrhythm kind of means ditching the grid, because when we get into notation, if you had a triplet written out and you're playing something in triplets and then you had a group of 16th notes and you needed to play those together at a faster tempo, you're not going to be subdividing further down like this at faster tempos, because your brain just can't do it. So what you need to do is learn the sound of this. So I'm just going to switch this back to some keys notes. And the reason I like to do this is because it helps you hear an actual melody between the two things. So with 3 against 2, and we'll turn off the subdivisions. So I've heard this said, you can say, nice bag of chips, nice bag of chips. And you can think of the 3, the red circles, as being nice bag chips, nice bag chips, and the blue squares as being nice and of, nice bag of chips, nice bag of chips. That's a really handy thing to have in your back pocket. Nice bag of chips, nice bag of chips, nice bag of chips, nice bag of chips. It just helps you remember how a 3 against 2 polyrhythm sounds. For a 3 against 4, I've heard a couple, and I forget what one of them is. One of them is pass the goddamn butter. Pass the goddamn butter. Pass the goddamn butter. And for 3 against 5, I think there was one. I can't remember what it was, to be honest. It gets a bit silly, but the idea is that if you really want to learn these, you can just put this on a loop and go for a drive or go to bed or whatever, and just have this thing playing around in your head and switch from hearing one side to hearing the other side, and just do it to the point where you just know how this thing sounds, and then playing it is easy once you do that. So yeah, you can choose your sounds in here. While it's playing, you can change volumes in here too. On the sounds page, I can change the volume to help you focus on one. And you can change the volume. You don't need to necessarily have something play on the start. There's the tambourine there, but you can take that out. And then you can set colors as well, which is just people who like to change the colors of things. And then you can switch the rates around here, and I'll just talk about that briefly, because a 3 versus 5 polyrhythm and a 5 versus 3 polyrhythm are slightly different. They're the same in that it's the same melodic kind of pattern, the same rhythmic pattern, but you have to pick one side to be the tempo. So in this app, whatever is the A rate is considered the tempo. So if this is set to 60 BPM, then whatever is here is going to play once a second. So 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And if I change this to 11, it's just going to play 11, but at that same tempo. So we've got 11 versus 5 here. This is what 11 versus 5 sounds like. And you'll notice if I view on this focus, so we're focusing on the 11, or I switch this to focus B, it doesn't change the tempo. But if I switch here, now we've got to fit 11, but only 5 red notes. So if I mute this, they're playing at the same rate, but now we're fitting the 11 over the top. So it sounds very different, even though it's the same rhythmic relation between them, the tempo is different. So that's why you can swap it here, but that's why I have this focus mode to let you switch which you're focusing on without switching the tempo. So I hope that makes some kind of sense. And then there's this, you can hide the controls if you just want something for a demo. Tapping anywhere in here will play it. And I should mention there's a help button here which takes you to a page which has a video of me basically explaining exactly what I've just gone through, but a little bit more briefly. And there's a written explanation of polyrhythms in there as well. And then finally down here you can share, and you can open this in Polynome. So let's do one that's more useful. 3 against 4. Okay, and I'm going to share this, see if this works. Open in Polynome. So when you're in Polynome, you've got some different visuals available. So the circle thing can be useful if you're thinking of, okay, my right hand's going to play over here, and my left hand's going to play over here. And you can see how time is divided up into 4 and into 3. So we're no longer thinking in grids here, we're just thinking in kind of space. I find it useful to change the display mode to this circle where you have them both on the same circle. And you've got the numbers in the middle that will count this for you as well. And you can have concentric circles, which you can see quite clearly how those things are spread out. And then there's lines, which is less useful and less pretty. And then you can turn off the visuals here as well. And when it's turned off, you can see the notation for this. And so because Polynome is notation based, and you've got these 2 sequences, and you have to choose a time signature and you have to choose something to write into these sequences. So what Polynome does is, when you have a polyrhythm, which if you were creating it from scratch, you would go to the presets page, tap on the plus and choose polyrhythm. And that loads up the default polyrhythm preset. So whatever I set in here will get created over here. And then you can edit it by tapping on this button here and edit the polyrhythm. So 4 versus 3, it's going to automatically set the time signature to be 4/4. So we'll update it here. So you've got a time signature of 4/4 with 4 quarter notes. So that's kind of our base. And then we're going to play 3 notes in that bar. So that's a half note triplet down here, and that's how you get this 4/3, or 3/4 essentially. If I edit this to be 3 versus 4, so this is what I was saying in Polyrhythm Explorer. If you do the switch, so rate A is now 3 and rate B is 4, now it's going to make the time signature be 3/4, so we can have 3 quarter notes again. So whatever is on the left here is going to be written out as quarter notes in a time signature that makes sense. So now we have 3/4 with 3 quarter notes, and we're going to play 4/3 in that space. But it sounds the same as 3 against 4, essentially. So some other things you can do here, because you might see polyrhythms written out all within a beat. So a quarter note, sorry, an eighth note triplet versus a group of 16th notes. So I've seen a whole bunch of Instagram videos where people are doing these polyrhythm challenges. So it'll be eighth notes, triplets, 16th notes, quintuplets, all played with and against each other. So if you want to see what this would look like, then you would edit this, and instead of an automatic time signature, you would just set this to be 1/4. So now it's going to write it out as divisions of a beat. So here you can see a triplet versus 16th notes. So it's exactly the same melody and rhythm going on, it's just faster. But you can kind of appreciate what I mean. At this tempo, here you're having to divide these into 4. One to the and then play every third one. One to the. So it's harder at this speed to count those, and it's more of a case of you've just learned how it sounds by that point. Now, in Polyrhythm Explorer, we start with this idea of a grid and accenting or playing certain parts of that grid. And Polynome does have an equivalent. So when you have a polyrhythm loaded up like this, you can tap on this button and edit it. You have to do this in automatic time signature mode. So I'll go back, so it's going to write it as 3 in 3/4 like this. And when you have it like this, there's a grid mode, and this gives you the notational equivalent of the grid. So you had 3 quarter notes up here, and we're essentially dividing them into 16th note groups: 1E and a 2E and a 3E and then down here you're playing every third note: 1E and a 2E and a 3E, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and. So this is the same thing as that grid before, but now it's written musically in notation. And you can hear, I can change the accent level. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So if we, for example, edit this polyrhythm and we did 3 against 5, and we see what that looks like, now you're having to divide the quarter note into quintuplets. Let's make this full screen. So you have to be able to play a quintuplet. University, university, university. And then you're accenting every third note of that quintuplet to give you the 5. But if we switch this around and we did 5 against 3, now you're going to be in 5/4, and you only have to divide into triplets, which is more common that people can divide into triplets. So 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 5 triplet, and then you have to play every 5th one. So the challenge here is counting the triplets and knowing when you've got through 5 of them. So it's helpful to see that it's on the let of beat 2 and the trip of beat 4. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 5 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 5 triplet. And that's where, in some ways, the grid version of this, with that focus mode here, is handy. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 5 triplet. So it's just 2 ways of of seeing the same thing, but the polynome version here is the way that you would write things out with notation.
Joe,
Yeah,
sorry, Joe, could you show one? I like sometimes messing around with like 4/7. Could you show something against 7 just so we can see how it does the subdivisions and breaks those down?
sure. So let's do 4 and 7. So I have this written as, in this case, 7 quarter notes, 1E and a 2E, a 3E and a 4E and a 1E, 6E and a 7E, 1, 2, a 3. Now, if you switch it here, focus on the other rate, I write this as go to university, go to university, go to university, go to university, go to university. I got that
That's
from
cool.
Bunny Greb. Um, there's some people say Minneapolis, go to Minneapolis, go. And you can have anything. You could use conical syllables if you want to count things like that. I may, in some future version, have a settings where you could choose what phrases you wanted to use for the different things, because maybe somebody's got one for 9 or 11.
That
But
would
for now,
be
these are fixed.
Yeah,
Sorry?
that would be no, that would be awesome. I really like this because for the ones that get up above 4 and things like that, I never quite know what verbiage to use if I want to say it. I mean, pass the goddamn butter is pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
But the other ones get really strange.
Yeah, I think 3 against 5 is the biggest one that I found somebody having a phrase for it. And the issue with those phrases is people will say things differently. You might have pass the goddamn butter as the memorable phrase, but you might say pass the goddamn butter, or actually that's
Oh,
still
right,
kind of right. But a student might go pass the goddamn butter, pass the goddamn butter with
right.
a gap. You got to like keep everything right. So it sort of is a two-way thing in that the phrase needs to automatically kind of come out with the right sort of rhythm, but you also need to know whether it's right. You need to know what the rhythm is to check if you're saying it right, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but with these ones, go to university, this is just a case of saying them evenly. Go to university, go to university, go to university, go to university. And it's just helping you find every 7 notes instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's easier to say go to university, go to university. And with conical, you could have like takadimi, takata, takadimi, takata, takadimi, or there's various different ways you could phrase groups of 7. But I think I'll make that customizable so you can just maybe pick from a variety of things or choose your own. So back in polynome, well, let's send this one across 4 versus 7. Let's share that too. Polynome. So this is what 4 against 7 looks like with the circles. We'll turn that off. We'll put on the grid. So now you're dividing into septuplets.
Couplets.
And then again, if you were to switch this round and edit this and make it a 7 versus 4, it would write it in 7/4, and you just have to divide into 16ths. So it's the exact same rhythmic thing, but the pitches are switched over in this way. So I'm running a little longer than I thought. I'm going to quickly show you a couple of other things in polynome that can help with this stuff. So the first is, let me put this back into turn off grid mode. So if you want to learn 4 against 7, you can tap on this and create a trainer or range. So this will create a playlist based on this 7 against 4 polyrhythm. So let's get a tempo we like. This is too slow. Okay, that's a decent tempo. So you want to learn this. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you want to be able to play that and count one side or count the other. So the trainer, which is the default here, you've got trainer or range. So the trainer will count one side and then count the other side and then just let you hear it. So if I create this, we get a playlist.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3,
and then it just plays it. And then it goes on a loop.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
So you're kind of focusing on the high note, focusing on the low note, and then hearing the thing by itself. And this is created in a playlist right here. So it plays the 7, plays the 4, plays both together. By default, it does 2 reps of each, but you can change that, set all reps to be 1, and it'll play 1 of each.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Or you could make it 4 of each, or whatever you like. And you can turn on the visuals. So you can be looking at this 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can practice looking at these and counting one side, counting the other. 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So that's the trainer, and you can do that with any polyrhythm. Now you'll note that if I tap on this now, there isn't an option to create a trainer because we're already in a playlist. So to get back to that original polyrhythm preset, you go back to the presets here and load up the polyrhythm that's here. And that's where you could edit this and do a 7 against 5, for example. Update that. Now you could create a trainer for this and create it. And notice that it's basically, I should have it load up the playlist page here really. But it's created a 7 against 5 polyrhythm trainer and put it in this playlist. You can also do it from the new playlist button. You can choose a new polyrhythm playlist and create a trainer or a range here. So I'll show you a range, and then that's pretty much covers everything. So if you do a range, then the first rate in sequencer 1 remains constant. So in this case, it will be 7. And then the other sequencer will play all of the divisions from 1 up until whatever you select, and then back down to 1. So if I choose 7, then we're going to have 7 against 1, 7 against 2, 7 against 3, 7 against 4, all the way up to 7, and then back down. And by default, it does 4 reps of each, but just to speed things up, I will set all the reps to be 1. And now we get this. Excuse the toddler in the background. So 7 against 3, 7 against 4. Now what makes something like this particularly difficult to play is if you are thinking of the kind of grid mode, essentially your brain is having to switch from, in this version, dividing into 2. So if I turned on the grid here, we're dividing into 1/8 notes. If I turn on the grid for this one, you're having to divide into triplets. If I turn on the grid for this one, you're having to divide into 16th notes. So in order to go from a 7 versus 2 polyrhythm to a 7 versus 3 polyrhythm, you're having to switch up those subdivisions in your head. That's kind of what's going on under the hood. So that's pretty much it for the polyrhythm features in Polynome that are new. Oh, one more thing. Let's just quickly go back to the presets. So just to sort of reiterate, when you click on the plus and choose polyrhythm, it loads up this default polyrhythm preset. It doesn't create a new one. So you can click that, it brings up the generator, and let's do 3 versus 4. Now when I set the time signature to be something different, like 1/4, it wrote it out as divisions of a quarter note. If I set the time signature to be 5/4, then it's going to play 3 in a bar of 5 and 4 in a bar of 5, and the 5 can be treated as a third polyrhythm. So now if we do this with the visuals on, you can have 3-way polyrhythms. But there's no real easy way of doing a grid for this, because you would need a grid that's divisible by 3, 4, and 5. So you've got a massive, very high density grid for some of these things, and it would be difficult to get your head around. So when you're doing 3-way polyrhythms like this, it's more a case of knowing what a 3 against 4 one sounds like, what a 3 against 5 one sounds like and what a 4 against 5, and kind of bringing the different ones in and out. And for this, you might want to, in the numbers, choose static. So now you can just see this is the 3, this is the 4, this is the 5. It's a little less busy, and you can kind of focus on the different things. The click is the green one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the lower note is the 4, and the high note is the 3. And you can change the colors of those circles again if you're into that kind of thing in preferences. And that pretty much covers the polyrhythm features. And if you wanted to save this as a standalone preset so you don't have to create it again, just tap on the name and duplicate, and I can call it 345, for example, and then it will be saved to your presets library. So I got about 10 minutes left. If you have any questions about anything I've covered, or general questions about polyrhythms and polynome, I'm happy to answer those. So fire away.
Hey, Joe.
Hey.
If there's time, could you discuss swing a little bit? I know it's a little off topic, but just in particular, the variation between swing, because I noticed in polynome, you have the percentages in there. So, like in American music, there's different kinds of swing, different kinds of emphasis. You'd have your people that are more towards the higher percentage and more people towards the lower percentage. If there's time, I don't want you to stray.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll quickly talk about that because it's a relatively sort of hidden feature. Let me create a new preset. I'll just call it swing. So I will program some eighth notes into this. And let's put a groove on here. Let's do a ride. And I'll just put a kick and snare pattern. I don't know why I'm not hearing those. Okay. So there you've got a straight eighth note groove. Slow it down a little bit. There we go. So you can tap on here and there's a swing menu. And you can choose between 8th and 16th swing. So we've got eighth notes, so we want to swing the eighth notes. And the swing percentage in polynome moves this second note. This is at 0%, exactly where it is. And 100% would overlay it over the next note. So if I push this all the way to 100, now you're essentially just hearing quarter notes because the offbeats are pushed all the way onto the next note. So the percentages are everything between that. And that means that 33% works out as a triplet swing. And in fact, when you're at 33%, it says triplet right here. So that's a perfect 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. If you go to 50%, and you can jump to the main divisions by pressing these arrows. So that's off, that's triplet, push it again, and you get to dotted note. 1E, A2E, A3E, A4. So this is 50%, and that makes sense if you think about it. It's halfway between this note and that note. So that would be the A, essentially. Push this again and it will jump to 66%. Doesn't give it a label, but that's essentially the last note of a sextuplet. Get that. So a really sort of stretched out swing, and then you can nudge this up, get closer and closer. Now, if I'm at triplet swing and I turn this to 16th, it just goes back to straight, and that's because if you were to write out something with 16th notes and you are swinging things, so let's replace this with 16th notes and this with 16th notes. If you're swinging 16th note things, you're moving these notes, you're not moving the eighth notes. So if I play this, it's going to sound weird. Let me just take the kick and the snare out, actually. Let's put it kick there. There. That should do it. Okay. So that's swinging the 8th notes to the triplets and playing the 16th note straight. So take this all the way off. 1 and 2 Rihanna, 3 and 4 Rihanna. If we do a triplet swing, 1 triplet, 2 Rihanna, 3 triplet, 4 Rihanna. If I switch to this 16th, now the 8th notes have to say straight because it's swinging the offbeat 16th note. So this is still on the beat. Okay, so that's how the swing works in Polynome, and it's also available in the mixer. So if you bring the mixer up over here, there's a swing fader. And if you're using the fader, if you long press below, it jumps to the major divisions. And if you single press, it jumps in 1% increments. Does that answer your questions?
I was having trouble. Yes, it does. I was having trouble with the swing submenu that you had there. I don't seem to see it on mine.
Oh, so, okay. It might depend on what your pattern is. For example, if I edit this and put quarter notes in, then it may not appear. Yeah, because these menus in Polynome are kind of smart menus in that it doesn't show up because it wouldn't do anything because you can't swing just quarter notes. So if you edit the pattern and have an 8th note or a 16th note in there, then you will get the swing option.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other quick questions? Oh.
Can you hear me, Joe?
I can, yeah.
Am I coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I wasn't sure whether I was or not. It wasn't a question. It was. It's related to something I'd come across with some pupils that I've sort of worked with on polyrhythms, but actually they were really quite junior pupils, but not on drum kit. This was more, I suppose, percussive.
Mm-hmm.
And your particularly the new app, which is obviously, for example, the 3 against 4, or even against 5 against 3. What I found was quite interesting to introduce players to polyrhythms was not actually to make them think about playing, say, 5 in the space of 3, but is actually to get them either singing or clapping the actual collapsed rhythm before you look at dividing up their limbs. I then get, particularly if there's a group of them as well, which I've done, where I've got them all clapping the rhythm, and then I'd get half the group clapping part of the rhythm, i.e. the 5, and then half the group clapping the 3. Now, obviously, there's a danger in falling apart, but what I generally did was I kept the rhythm going, usually on a cowbell or something.
Yeah.
So that they were able to always lock into that, and then I explained how to do it. And they were actually quite amazed that they were doing what a lot of people regard as being really quite difficult but they didn't realize what they were doing. I got them playing it without them actually knowing what they were going to be doing. And I then saying, you're now playing polyrhythms.
Yeah. I think...
Which I thought was quite a good thing, particularly with younger players who maybe, or young musicians who haven't got to the point of understanding, even particularly subdivisions or all that. Anyway, it was just a point. It wasn't a question for you, but I certainly think that this sort of app is very useful because it can help. Certainly with the clap things, you can actually program that up so people could hear it.
Yeah, I think I suspect that works well until you get to something that doesn't have a 2, 3, or a 4 in it. So if you did a 5 against 7, the collapsed rhythm
5 against 7's problematic, definitely.
Yeah, because you've nothing to really lock into. So like in order to play that, you really need to your brain needs to have some kind of handle on. I mean, you could sort of do it, but really, your brain needs to kind of break down and have a handle on either quintuplets or septuplets, which is tricky because of the spacing between things. But you could
absolutely, yeah.
I do have some clap sounds in here, so if I play this, and we'll choose. I put claps in kind of for that reason. It's in the clicks, so we'll do a different clap. And then I'll just mute the subdivision. So yeah, you could get, like, that would be fairly easy, I think, for people to grasp onto because it's quite a short pattern. But I reckon if we made that 7 and make it a bit faster, let's just see how that sounds. Let's switch. It just starts to sound like things not quite lining up.
Absolutely. But I think it's quite a good way of starting to introduce people to that. And I mean, obviously, as you were saying, I mean, the reality is that polyrhythms, once you start to get sort of 5/7, I mean, you're looking at sort of avant-garde classical music, maybe some of the sort of prog, very advanced progressive stuff. Although a lot of the time, that seems to me it's mainly cross rhythm stuff rather than actual polyrhythms. So
yeah, and I think I'm contemplating adding a little bit of functionality to this in a future version to make it sort of polymeters, because this with no subdivision is kind of not going to be used for anything. But if I put that subdivision back up, and this is not designed for like super accuracy with audio, so it can be a little jittery with faster things like this, whereas Polynom will be perfect. But I'm thinking of adding something where you could basically do a division of this, so the 7 could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you'd have the red dots on go to university, and it would repeat on each thing and have different sounds for those, and then have something with the 5. So you could play, a 7 against a 5 polymeter essentially.
Right, yeah. Cool.
But that's kind of getting even more niche. I even contemplated having it do 4 ways, so you could have a 4-way thing, because there are people who I'm seeing doing that kind of stuff, but it's like one person wants that with a grid of like 1,000 things.
Oh my God.
There's a guy called Zach Morton on Instagram who did one that was like 3 against 5 against 7 against 11, where his right foot was playing groups of 11, groups of 11 sixteenths, and it said it took him 4 months to learn it, and he wrote the whole thing out, and it was like 1,500, subdivisions before the thing repeated.
Right.
So yeah, right now I've done the opposite with this to with Polynom. It's one page. There's only a few controls on it. They're hopefully relatively intuitive. And I've just found it a useful tool for teaching people about polyrhythms and for just playing around with them myself. And it's interesting to switch the grid around. All right, I'm going to sign off there. Thanks again for showing up for this. I did record it this time, so I shall send that out if you want to recap anything, and hopefully see you next time.